all, and welcome to that InboxArmy podcast. I'm your host, Scott Cohen, and with me today, the abbot to my Costello is my co-host, Garen Hobbs.
Hi, host Scott.
We are recording on the road today. We're coming to you all from the beautiful Stein Erikson Lodge here in Park City, Utah. We're together with friends and colleagues at Media Post Email Insider Summit, one of, if not my favorite shows of the year.
My favorite show.
Hands down. Absolutely.
My favorite show.
So today we're going to talk about email platform utilization, mistakes seen in RFPs, and program setups. We've been hearing a lot about Frankenstacks and things this week, so it's relevant.
I love that term, by the way.
Very great. Fabulous term. And where folks should be investing their money for the coming year and beyond. And we've invited two of our favorite, most knowledgeable people to the discussion. Joining us today, CEO and Managing Partner of RPE Origin, Ryan Phelan.
Hello.
And CEO and Founder of Email Connect, Chris Marriott. Guys, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
All right,
Thanks for coming to my room and just invading it.
Thanks
for hosting us.
Ryan had the best room of all of us, so we rated his room, and that's probably weird and not weird at the same time. Anyway, guys, before we get into the weeds, I always love hearing about the journeys that our folks have been on. We ask this of everybody that comes on the show. So, Chris, we'll start with you.
Okay.
How did you get to where you are today?
That's a long story. But before I even get into that, I'd like to say, I believe the first use of the phrase Frankenstack was made by me.
Oh, here we go again.
3 years ago, when I put a post on LinkedIn commenting on the Bloomreach acquisition of Exponio, and I referred to it as a Frankenstack, which I apologized for a year later when actually it became clear to me that it was a pretty good move. But I think that was, again, I can claim to have first used that. So how did I get here where I'm inventing phrases like Frankenstack? I started my career 1,000 years ago in advertising. And when the internet, real advertising, like TV commercials, Ogilvy and Mather, which is now part of WPP, whatnot. But when the internet or the web became a thing in the 90s, I transitioned over to one of the early web shops, a company called Think New Ideas, which was part of John Wren, who's the guy who just did that big deal with Interpublic and Omnicom. He's still running the company. He seemed ancient then. Sorry, John, if you're not watching this.
Maybe he is.
But he's still, anyway. So I got into the internet and eventually found my way to a company called Digital Impact, because they were looking for somebody to run agency services for them. This was in 2004. They wanted somebody to come into New York and run their office there who had an agency type background, client service, that kind of stuff. I knew nothing about email, but I knew how to manage an agency type organization, which those early ESPs were, because nobody knew how to create email. So if they didn't create email, if they didn't bring to the table everything a brand needed for email, they weren't going to get off the ground.
Shelfware.
Right. Exactly. So I got into there, and when I worked at then Axiom bought them, worked at Axiom, ran their global agency services for several years. And then when I left there, and I'll wind this up, I thought back to my days in advertising and what had become popular. Hey, this is a good story. In the late 80s and early 90s, it became a new type of company, consultancy, emerged in the advertising world, which were called search consultants, which were made up of ex-ad agency guys who knew all the secrets, who knew all the pricing, all the margins, and they offered their services to advertisers, brands, when they wanted to have a new agency, select a new advertising agency. And I thought to myself, this was around 2012, I bet there's a need. Platforms were getting ever more complex. New ones were coming onto the market every day. And I thought that there might be a need for brands in their RFP search for new ASPs to bring in outside consultants to help. And fortunately, I was right. And here I am today. I mean, I first did it with David Daniels at the Relevancy Group, and then I launched, we split that partnership in 2015, and I launched Email Connect, and here I am today.
I would give his story probably 3.5 wreaths.
I'll take it. Out of 4? I'll take it out of 4.
Out of 4, maybe.
Yeah, okay.
All right. I'll give you a shorter one because we only
abridged
have
version.
the abridged version.
Mine was fascinating.
But
And I'm
when I
older
was-
than you, so my story's got to be longer.
There we go. When I was on the farm in rural Iowa.
Dream.
No, let's see. 1998, I was running nightclubs, and I was a DJ, and decided that that was not a great career for making money, and so I applied to a job, an internet company back in '98. It was giftpoint.com. They hired me to run their affiliate program and their email program. I took their email program and ran with it. I co-founded Affiliate Summit back in the day with Sean Collins and Missy Ward.
I did not know that.
Yep. And then my career has been 26 years in this industry, working mostly for ESPs. I did a stint at Sears and Kmart for about a year and a half. But 10 years ago, John Caldwell, who was the founder of Red Pill Email, he and I used to go sailing on the weekends, and every time we went, he begged me to come work with him at Red Pill Email and be his successor and take it on. And I liked a regular paycheck. I kept saying no. And I worked for, my last job was at Destra. When I left that company in a moment of weakness, he called me up and said, "Hey, you need to come work for me." And I said yes. And so I've been at Red Pill, and we changed our name a few years ago to RP Origin. I've been there since 2018 as a CEO, and just having a great time with a wonderful group of people.
But you've resisted the sandals throughout that entire time.
No,
John
I
is
still
known
have.
for his flip-flops.
He is, but he lives in California, so he can wear them all the time.
Absolutely. Ryan should be wearing cowboy boots because he lives in Texas.
No, I will not wear. I have a pair of cowboy boots, but I still have my Birkenstocks and wear sandals.
There you go. Well, yeah, let's jump right in then. All right, so we've all seen the statistics. Average utilization of an email service providers, 25%, 30% of the total capability, something like that. Ryan, we'll start with you. Why does this continue to be the case?
So that stat came from my days at Responses, and we went out to prove how much of the platform they were using. And it came back that they were only using 20% of all the functionality. And what over the years has persisted is that statistic is the same. I think it's a function of people are still just doing what they have to do to get campaign work out the door. We're critically funded, underfunded, we short staff, short of time. There's not enough time to try something new, to invest in something new. And so I think people just do what's easy. Now, I think that number may change here in the immediate future. I think that during the email wars back early 2010s between Responses and ExactTarget, you had all this functionality. You had all this great stuff that people could use to extend the reach of email, more of the early process into omnichannel, and that innovation filtered down into the rest of the industry. When those two companies got acquired, innovation dried up. That 20% number just became the 20% number. Now with AI, you're seeing these market leaders, Zeta, Marigold, Cordial, you're seeing them with AI components and agents. And so what I think is going to happen is those top tier leaders are then now going to spurn another innovation wave in the ESP class. And AI has the service of making things easier, where people can go in and create segments, do a lot of the work that used to take us 6 months to do on the data scientist side. So I think that changes, but it's going to still take dedication from the marketer to say, I want to try something new. I want to use this. I want to test. I want to take a chance instead of just doing the same old thing all day.
I actually see this as being part of a repeating cycle, right? So the early 2000s, utilization rate was somewhere between 70 and 80%. Makes sense. The level of functionality was fairly low and people were utilizing most of what was there.
Right.
Then you have this whole shift in the industry where point solutions started spinning off sort of specific capabilities. And there was this, the solution should be more of a distributed solution rather than one that is entirely en suite. Utilization rate drops as more of that functionality was found outside of the central platform itself. We are now seeing, and then that followed that was again another period of consolidation where the big ESPs went out there, bought up a lot of the smaller ones, bought up some of the point solutions, incorporated them into their platform, and yet some people still chose to work outside of the platform with other solutions, so that utilization rate never quite recovered. Today,
we're seeing another period of consolidation rather than one of diversification yet again. You see all these folks out there snapping things up. But I think the utilization rate is down is because there's just so much inside every ESP. I mean, look at them. Half of them offer CDPs as well. You don't need to use that if you already have a CDP or data lake, data warehouse, something like that elsewhere. People are still very fond of other point solutions, and it's very common at our agency to work with clients who have email in one platform, SMS in another, and maybe even push is supported by something third, and then they have something separate for loyalty, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know that we'll ever get back to that period of the early 2000s where we see those utilization rates back up around 50% or so, because it was 80, then back down to 20, per Ryan. Then just 3 years ago, it was hovering around 60% again. Now it's back down to 25%. So we see this repeating cycle of diversification, consolidation, diversification, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe that's something we'll continue to see. I don't know. What do you think, Chris?
I agree with a lot of what both you and Ryan said. I think, and I'm sort of where to start. I think one of the innovation in the industry. You mentioned that that there were these third-party companies that spun off in the ecosystem that did things that the platforms weren't doing, and we've seen that time and time again. What we've also seen time and time again is that the ESPs, when the big vendors see that these third parties solutions are popular, they either build their own native or they buy it, and so innovation oftentimes is actually driven by these third parties, not by the ESPs themselves. A big reason for that, I believe, is, and I've seen it because for those who don't know what I do, I manage RFPs for brands, and the vendors oftentimes miss the mark when they're developing new features and functionality. They don't develop for the practitioner; they develop for the C-suite, and that also that's a reason why. That the third parties exist, because they listen to the practitioner and give them what they want. But it's also why things don't get used. I mean, as an example, I use this example of the perfect example of pitching to the C-suite and not caring what the practitioner thinks. Retargeting email openers with display ads. Vendors a few years ago, that was a huge thing, and vendors were all so excited. We can do that. You can do that. And they didn't stop to think. And I never knew a brand that did that. It never won an RFP, or even stood out in an RFP, even though they all talked about it. And it's because the email marketing team isn't going to redirect part of its budget to display advertising. That's not their job. They're not in acquisition. So it was something that never was used. It was in there, but it went completely unused by the brands. The last thing I'll say is what I think is also driving towards consolidation today, as you were saying, back to, is even as if you go back to 2010 or 11 or 12 when I started managing RFPs, I talked to the SMS team. They were separate from the email team, which was separate from this. Today, and you even see it here in the conference, the people are responsible for the owned media channels.
Exactly.
So they're responsible for SMS, they're responsible for push, they're responsible for email, and they want that all in one platform. When they were separate departments, they all got their own platform. But now that they're all one person, that person's saying, why wouldn't I get one platform that does all of these things? Why should I try to integrate these platforms and link these up and so I can get this complete view? So I think that the fact that all of these roles have sort of coalesced into a single role at the brand side is also driving the consolidation. And I mean, the platforms have these capabilities. Now people are saying, I want to use them. I want to use my platforms to push.
Right.
Or I need to. Yeah.
That single view orchestration.
Exactly.
And that fidelity between these channels.
Isn't it also that the platforms have gotten smarter about those consolidated plays? Because if you look early days, Adobe, right? Yeah. The famous tagline in the early days with their all-in-one thing is the only thing that was organized and combined was the billing system. And, yeah, I love Adobe, but, so you look at some of these platforms, Marigold, Zeta, that have done these consolidation plays. They've gotten smarter with their transfer of data, with their accessibility to a broader data set, and really worked on UX. Whereas in the old days, it was, I'm going to consolidate this partner and plug it in. I'm going to consolidate this, plug it in. And it was really clunky and sloppy.
Yeah.
And so I look at the marketplace and just say it's easier as a combined platform because the companies have really thought about what that combined product looks like
Yeah.
and done it the smart way.
And I'll add, sorry to jump in on you.
No, please.
Another thing I meant to say was, and we even heard this today when a couple of speakers were talking about, I don't want to go to my IT team. And I've seen that brands, it's a huge thing in RFPs in the last 3 or 4 years, a huge component of, can you do this?
Right.
Can your platform do this? And can I manage it without IT or vendor intervention?
Self-empowerment.
Exactly. So the platform, in the old days, people wouldn't do X, Y, Z in a platform with feature function because they had the other IT department. And nobody wants to go to their IT department.
No, because they don't have value.
Right.
And you're competing with other departments for their time and resources.
And they dismiss you out of hand.
And they don't trust you with the data either.
100%.
Exactly.
Always locked away.
Exactly. So now that the platforms have gotten easier to use by the marketing team, they're able to try the features and functionality without having to knock on anybody else's door.
Yeah. And I think the data query is the biggest part of that, right? I mean, how many of us spent so many years living in SQL query hell?
Right.
The problem with SQL is you had to know exactly what it was you were looking for.
Right.
And it simply confirmed exactly what you were looking for. With now this sort of open data structure where everything is unstructured data, you can see those insights more proactively without ever asking what may end up being a biased question.
Yeah.
And that's not
Right.
something that you would have ever got from the IT department, right?
But you still have the problem with bias in AI.
Yes.
You're not writing a query, but you're writing a prompt. You're creating an agent. And so AI is only smart as the person that programmed the insights and the weightings in the model. So you still have that balance. That could be another podcast about how is AI making us dumber as marketers.
Short answer, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Well, I mean, we talk about the decision, how can we avoid IT? How can we make the decisions easier and empower? All of us have been through ESP changes, either on the vendor side or on the brand side, where you're going, oh shit, I have to do all of this work now.
Or even the agency side.
Or the agency side,
Parties.
Right, exactly. So, Garen, you've heard me say this a million times, but don't make a switch unless it's absolutely necessary, even if it's a good decision.
100%.
So, Chris, what is that go, no-go decision point? What goes into you need to choose somebody new right now?
Right. It's like it's like breaking up with somebody. You reach a point of no return, and there are many ways you can get there. But my clients in 50 RFPs over the past 8 or 9 years, only one stayed with their existing vendor because to your point, nobody wants to move. But once they've decided they're going to move, that train has left the station.
Yes.
And unless it's a procurement driven, you got to do one every 3 years. But we love our vendor. You got to do one every 3 years. But from day one, that's why one of the reasons why we created a scorecard driven methodology for RFPs is so that you could see in black and white how your old RFP compared to the new ones you were looking at, and so that you could see that there was enough of a difference to make the pain of the migration worth it. So those scorecards are help brands go stick with their decision to move because they get black and white says, listen, you started with 8 in the first round, they scored in 8th place out of the vendors. I mean, of course you have to move. And people have heard me say, I mean, there's a changing of the guard going on right now, and you're seeing a lot of old tech get replaced by new tech. That's not a hard decision.
No.
It's not like you have these next gen going against each other yet in a lot of these RFPs that I've seen, which I think is a tougher decision because is it a step change improvement going from one to another? You could make arguments both ways, but going to any one of those next gen platforms with the NoSQL databases from a legacy platform is a no-brainer, should be a no-brainer, and I'm frankly stunned by the degree that legacy platforms still are able to maintain the client base that they have, and that it isn't shrinking faster than it is.
I think a lot of times that's a question of what is the input versus what do I enjoy on the output, right? So anecdotally, this happened maybe 3 years ago. I was working for one of the new generation ESPs.
Yep.
Went through this exhaustive RFP process with a very well-known athletic shoe retailer. And at the end of it, they said, you know what? You're right. This is exactly the direction we need to go. The future of our business depends on it. But not now, not today. It's going to require that we break and flatten our entire data structure. We just don't have the time and resources, even though we know by not doing so, we'll be leaving a significant amount of opportunity and money on the table.
Wow.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah, I hate RFPs that are that way.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I would sniff that out well in advance and not put the vendors through that. I mean, because
It was a tough thing. They
that's
were
awful. To
way
vendors.
down the path with another ESP in terms of making their final decision. In fact, they were in their final decision stage. I happened to meet this person at an event in Florida. We were literally having a conversation at a bar. He pulled out his phone, called his entire marketing department, said, pause. We're now going to take a look at this other ESP. So it wasn't necessarily something they had anticipated, certainly nothing that we had the ability to have foresight into. It was just one of those things that happened. It was sort of a Cinderella moment that ended with the coach turning into a pumpkin at the end of it.
But that's a failure of that leader fully knowing what a migration and a change looks like.
Yeah.
I agree.
That is an ignorant statement because
That's a lack of needs assessment, right?
Yes,
I mean,
It's also a lack, I think, of knowledge of what is available out on the market, right?
Yeah.
They didn't realize that, hey, these open data structures now exist that can open up all of these actionable insights across our family of 9 different brands. It's more of that, we're doing it this way because this is the way we've always done it, this is the way that we're structured, and this is the way we're going to continue for at least the very near future.
well, and that's one of the biggest mistakes that companies make when they do a migration is they migrate from platform A to platform B, and platform B at the end of the day looks just like platform A.
Yeah.
And it's this learning opportunity between that to say, okay, you're going to do things completely different. Your data is going to be structured different. Your creative is going to be built in different. Your automations are going to be different. Your reports are going to be different. Get used to that and adapt because you have to. If you replicate the same stuff you have on this side to this, you're not going to be happy with this for very long.
Right.
Well, and why are you making the switch if you're just replicating the
Exactly.
problem?
What's
Correct.
the point? Change of view?
Yeah.
It's window dressing. It's a new interface, but it's the same data. And
And you're using it the same way.
yes.
Right. I think one of the interesting things is that in this sort of changing the guard is you can't do that. You can't lift and shift when you're going from relational database to a NoSQL database. But what I've seen, and one of the reasons why I was so eager to be in this partnership is, it's very easy to pick a new ESP and then discover, because even the vendors don't hammer home the difference that a NoSQL database means, and what the migration is going to be, and how much more complex it's going to be, because you have to now think of, all right, what's our data schema going to be? Because they're not schema lists. But they start schema lists, but there's a schema
It's all
when
arrays.
you're done.
Yeah,
Right.
it's all arrays with
And-
those
and-
structures.
My clients, after the RFP was done and they picked somebody, it got to the point where they look at me and they were like, help.
Yeah.
It's like, now we've got to do this tons of work, and we want to get it right, to Ryan's point. We don't want to end, and it's not like the old days where we're bouncing from relational database to relational database, and we could kind of lift and shift and take the easy way out if we wanted to.
But now it's about lift and innovate.
You lift and innovate.
It should be.
And that's going to take longer. Brands need to, I don't want to get off too much on a tangent, but brands need to understand how long the RFP is going to take,
Mhm.
but even more importantly, how long the migration is going to take.
Right.
Because the migration is going, I used to say to brands, how long is your RFP going to take? Tell me what you think it is, then we're going to double that.
Mhm.
And for migration, I think it's tell me what you think it's going to be, and we're going to quadruple that. I know you'll quadruple
Well,
that.
the mistake is that they think it's plug and play,
Right.
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And it breaks your website. It breaks all your triggers have to be rebuilt.
Yes.
Mhm.
Everything has to be rebuilt. The emails have to be rebuilt. I mean, there's
Configuration of your
new
entire stack.
the nuance of all the code has to be rebuilt for even if you're like, we love our designs, we still have to lift and pick that up and move it over to all that other piece. So
Yeah.
even in the best case scenario, 3 months,
Best.
and that's if you have all your shit together.
Yeah.
And you're tiny.
Yes,
And
Right.
have sufficient resources and available cycles to actually complete the work.
correct.
Again, correct. Yeah.
I mean, let's talk about common mistakes, right? We touched on it already, but I feel like we're just in that mode. I mean, that's a big mistake. Making
there
a
are
decision
5.
based on budget, is that a huge mistake?
I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're limiting your opportunity based upon what you feel you have in your pocket to spend versus what the needs and desired business outcomes actually demand, right? And I think kind of have 5 points. Scott, at our agency, we get this question 3 to 5 times a day.
Yeah.
So I tend to tell people, you need to tick off all 5 points, not just one. One, you move because the needs of your business have outgrown the capability of your current platform. 2, you don't have the necessary insights, data, or the ability to enact or to act upon those insights with your current platform. 3, your current platform does not allow you to extract the maximum value and utility from your own internal resources, your own internal marketing team. Right? 4, it doesn't integrate or complement the rest of your technical stack. And 5, even if you've answered yes to all of those things, is every single person, every stakeholder in your organization, to our earlier point, committed to not just making a switch, but doing things differently here internally as well.
Yeah.
It sounded like a mic drop there.
It wasn't a mic drop.
Thank you very much.
It was. I mean, that's been the reason for moves for the last 20 years, right? And it's not
Supposedly, but it's not usually. We've seen it. It's these weird things that end up actually driving the decision rather than those 5 very, very practical reasons.
Oh yeah, you always have the
experience,
intangible. You always have the intangible. I think the other thing, the common mistake that a lot of companies make is they don't realize you were talking about budget. About the profitability of the move is generally not seen until year 2 or 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
we're going through a very small CRM migration, right? And she is going to end up saving $10,000 a year on this new contract. It had the same functionality. It was great. She's like, instantly, I'm going to save $10,000. I said, yes, but instantly you're going to pay me $15,000 to pay for the migration. I said, you're going to see your profitability in year 2, not in year 1. And so it took me a while to teach her that that's, the formula. I look at some of the migrations and some of the projects we've worked on in the last 3 years. They look at the ROI of their migration and their choice in a 3 to 5 year window because they're so complex and sophisticated. And so along with that timeline for the RFP, for the migration, for all that organization and execution, it's looking at when can you report to the board that you actually made money off of the decision, regardless of what you make from an increase in throughput in your programs.
And it's not just about the costs on the paper. I think that when we talk about underinvestment or why am I going to pay $60,000, $150,000 more in a year, and you go, people savings,
Yes.
time savings, like you have to do the math.
Yes.
Because that's how, when I've done this from the brand side, people go, well, why am I going to increase my ESP expense by 25%? Like, yeah, but I'm going to save 50% over here.
Right.
Because I'm not dealing with legacy platform crap.
Yeah.
Right?
And in some cases, I'm going to save that money, but from the reduction, there's a certain ESP in the space. Love when we can pull people off of that platform and take them somewhere else because their prices decrease by 40%. That's an instant savings.
Yeah.
Again, you're going to roll it into X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And you're not going to pay as much for this platform as you were for that platform. But there is a CapEx presentation layer that goes with time savings and throughput and programs. But it also covers off on we're going to have to spend extra because this platform has ad costs and acquisition costs, and we're going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And so there is a deep discussion that makes it more complex. That's where, when we come in, Chris and I and you guys, when we come into an RFP or to a migration, we can help with those conversations to ensure that everybody is still on board, even though they've made this organizational change.
As far as those savings and the cost efficiencies in terms of time, people, process, etc., I think I go back to your earlier point. You shouldn't probably rightfully expect to see those in year 1 as well, right? There's definitely a time to value. There's not only the technical migration, but there's the knowledge and skill set migration as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's what does it take for me to now? Do I have to learn Liquid? Do I have to learn AMP script? How long is it going to take my team to not only learn those things, but to become
You should never have to learn.
Thank
Ever
you.
again.
I'm with you 100%.
Ever again.
But and not just the operative, but more the philosophical as well. If we have this new opportunity in front of us and this great array of capability, how do we then amend our own current business processes and our philosophy of approach to meet and take full advantage of those things? And that just doesn't happen overnight, nor within the period of a migration.
No, and that's extra services from, we do that for companies post-migration, is stay on for a period of 6 months and help teach them, check their work, be almost a fractional resource for them, or take over for them when they don't need it, right? And so there are a lot of things that people don't think about. They just think, hey, I got a chosen ESP, we're going to put our data in there in our campaigns, and I'm going to start, push, and go.
Right.
It's
it's interesting because vendors don't make money in the first year of a contract either.
Not typically.
Yeah.
No.
I mean,
And the
that-
secret is they make money when you send your first email.
Right.
That's when they can realize the revenue for the P&L.
Right.
And so that's why in a migration, and this is one of the biggest mistakes that companies make,
That's why they push it to go so fast.
Yes.
that's why
Even
your
though you're
first
not
meeting,
ready.
your
It's
first
ready.
meeting,
Yeah.
if you go into the first meeting after you sign the contract and they start talking about IP warm-up, you are in trouble. And you need to raise your hand to an agency to come in and control that conversation, because the only reason they're talking about an IP warm-up is that they want you to start sending emails so that they can recognize the revenue to the street. That is the only reason, because the last conversation should be about IP warm-up. The first conversation should be, what is your data structure? How do we make it work inside of our platform? What resources do you have? Let's map out what your current people, processes, integrations, all that stuff. Those are the core conversations up front.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with IP warm.
Frankly, those should be happening before signing.
They should,
chunk
but
of
it
them anyway.
commonly doesn't.
Yeah.
And that's because it's an investment that companies don't want to make, right? And
Which I can understand,
ESPs
yeah.
don't want to overcommit in case it falls through. I mean, there's been a lot of deals in the history of the space where it went from verbal and in the contract, it went to hell, right? And so, yes, when we talk to clients, we want them to do that discovery and that mapping process with a product we have at the time that they have a verbal with the last two vendors. Not even with the last one. With the last two is when you're supposed to start prepping for that migration, because you know it's going to happen, and regardless of who you pick, the migration is your stuff, not their stuff.
Yep.
You know, having heard that, I wonder if there might be an advantage to that being a process that happens even earlier on in the decision, before they even decide if they want to move. Is there an opportunity to sit down and mend?
So
our-
we do
We
that.
do that. I mean,
We do that.
We've started
But
doing
how
that.
many folks are really open to that? You know what I mean?
It's really about transparency to the client to say, here's what you have ahead.
Yeah.
Right? And
Bowel
if you're
surgery while running a marathon.
Yeah. If you're ready to run this marathon at about mile X, you're going to start wishing you were dead,
Yep.
right? And what we try to do is say, how can we make sure that when you pick the right vendor, you're happiest with the vendor after you're done? And so in that education of the client, it benefits them to know, hey, you should start prepping for your migration today. You should heavily do it when you're down to the last two. And then, we have clear steps to help make that happen.
You know,
No, you first, Chris.
okay, I was going to say, the other thing about the migration and the time it takes, and another reason vendors historically have tried to compress it, you're exactly right, Ryan, is when they can recognize money. But also, if you sign a 3-year contract, the longer the migration takes, the shorter your actual earnings cycle is
Yes.
in the contract. And I've actually recommended in the last couple RFPs we've done that the migration be a discrete project. Don't put a 3-year contract starts after the migration's done. Everybody, I think, feels better. That to me, that makes way more sense. There's no reason why
Yes.
a single contract should have the migration built into it. Keep them clean, keep them separate, and that way to the point you made, Ryan, again, which was excellent. Yes, they still want to start sending, but the pressure's off that they're not burning their 3-year contract,
Correct.
warming up your IPs.
Yeah.
Correct. Or just being irresponsible with the timelines that it's going to take.
Yep.
And, everybody knows that the migration is going to take a bit of time.
Yep.
Account for that in your volume estimates, for your service fees and all that kind of stuff. That's what Chris helps do with a lot of companies is let's structure the contract in what is realistic, and let us help you to negotiate that with the ESP,
Yep.
knowing that you've seen contracts for the last 8 years and know what everybody's going to agree to.
Yeah, exactly right.
So, Scott, we've all given you the perspective from agency side, consultant side, provider side. Out of the 4 of us, you're the only one who's been on brand side through one of these. So
Oh, no, I have.
you have as well.
Serious.
Oh, that's right. You were at Sears and Kmart for a while as well.
Sears and Kmart, we moved from Cheetah Mail to Responses.
How was that?
I left before it got bad. Took them 3 years to move, which was not uncommon. That was 15 years ago. But it was an
I can't imagine something taking that long.
We currently have a client that is in year 3 of a migration, and they probably won't be done for another 2.
Is it a safe assumption to say that's more of a legacy provider situation or more of the newer wave of solutions?
Legacy to newer.
And
So somebody who has like 25 years of data,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
brand,
Mhm.
and their data to the point earlier of you got to have your shit ready to go.
Yep.
If you don't, the migration takes that extends
Not
the
only your
migration.
data, but the politics.
Yes,
That's one thing that a lot of people don't think about is
yeah.
the politics of what exists today to what has to exist tomorrow. So think about it this way. This group controls X. They have always controlled X. That's where his power base or her power base is, and everybody has to come to the well to get X. Well, with a new platform, now I want X's stuff to be in that platform.
Yeah.
democratized, yeah.
Yes. So now what happens to his or her power base? It goes away because now it's being put into the platform.
Yep.
Right? And so if you're not ready for those political discussions and the cover that you're going to need from the C-level to make that happen, it just keeps going in this circular hamster wheel of, I don't want to, I do want to, let's spend 6 months exploring how that would look. And at the end, oh, it just won't work.
How many times have you run into more on the other side of the coin, but the number of times I've run into it where you go to IT and go, we need this, and they go, we could build it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And you go, can you do it in 6 months? Well, no. Well, we need to move in 6 months. So can you do it in 6 months? No. Then we'll buy it.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was you that said it or somebody said it 10 years ago. If it exists, buy it. If not, build it.
I probably said that. And
I've heard it. Yeah.
And I'm just stealing it from Chris, who will probably claim that.
I think on LinkedIn,
Might have been
in
the same.
2000
Yeah.
It was the same Frankenstein moment.
Yeah.
But fact check me on that Frankenstack. You can go back on my LinkedIn post. But what was it? No, I completely lost my train of thought.
Excellent. Next topic.
We can build it.
Oh no! Here's what I was saying.
Yeah.
The biggest mistake. Thank you. The biggest mistake I think any brand can make is hire somebody from Amazon into a senior IT role within their company. Because every time I've run across a company where they've got a homegrown ESP or they want to have a team compete in the RFP that's internal.
Mm-hmm.
There's an Amazon guy behind it because they think they can because they built
Yes.
Amazon, so they think they can build everybody. So don't hire anyone from Amazon.
100%. I've had them as a client.
I mean, they're great.
Their response to everything that I would bring to them is, well, we can build this.
Right.
And my response was always, but you won't.
Right. No, you build it.
How soon?
It's the worst.
And how
Yes.
many millions of dollars do you need to hire internally and do all that?
But it's beyond that, because now you have to support and continue to evolve something that is entirely proprietary and built in-house.
Yeah.
And by the way, the knowledge of which is usually siloed within one or two people who may or may not.
No,
say
they're not going to
anything.
document it. No, they're going to build everything. Document.
Well,
and you know what? The minute it's done, they're going to move on to the next cool project, and it's cementware from then on.
Yep.
It's not going to evolve.
But that's the funny thing about the perception of what email is that there are some legacy platforms that were built on their own that do work well.
Yeah.
But that was a service of they had to because the platforms at the time could not support the volume. Responses, Exact Target, any of the big players back in the early or mid 2000s could not handle that volume. And Amazon, Facebook all had no choice but to build their own platform for deployment. Now, today, that doesn't exist.
Right.
Yeah,
They
with
can-
burst capacity elastic.
When you talk about cloud-based infrastructure, when you talk about the scalable technology that a lot of these ESPs are built upon, it's no longer a choice of build it or buy it. It is always buy it.
Yeah.
I think of folks like Groupon, right? Nobody could support Groupon with a platform for decades because they had just such monstrous send volumes. And
Well,
That's
and
no
a
longer
burst. I mean, it was not just the volume; it was the bursts of
Yes,
emails.
just-
Had to go out in a limited. all of the daily, deal
Yep.
things. They had to,
And who's going to build this megalithic thing that sits there idle 98% of the time?
and then has to send out 100 billion emails in 10 minutes between 7 a.m. and 7:15.
Right. But Chris and I have talked to one of the largest senders on the planet. They may be shopping for an ASP, right?
Yeah.
And that's not, and they don't even cross the Rubicon of we should just build it ourselves.
No.
It is just, this is the reality of things, even at their volume.
Yeah.
And the technology just is capable of doing. I mean, I can remember being at Responses, and we were in an Orbit's pitch. Part of the pitch was, you're going to come to our office. We're going to give you a USB stick of like 5 million people, or some ungodly number. You have to upload it into your system and send a campaign while sitting in our office, and we're going to have the stopwatch on.
Yep.
Now, the funny thing is, behind the scenes, it was a dedicated server in the office of the corporation, and everybody had shut everything else down. And it was people praying over the box
Oh, man.
that it could do it. It wasn't even in our stack. It was a server set up on somebody's desk
Oh, jeez.
just to power the demo.
A hardwired demo.
It was.
Fantastic.
Remember that old Orbit's office? It was a great location.
Well, let's,
Yes.
we talked about AI briefly.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I know we have a question for this. Do you mind if we hit that one?
Yeah.
The underinvestment. So, where are folks under investing in email? I definitely have a thought on that, but would love to hear from Ryan and Chris first.
Let's let Ryan go first.
Everywhere. At every level, staff, innovation, agency services. There is not a piece of the email department that is funded to full capacity unless you get to the super enterprise level. And then you have internal people, external people, agency people that are properly investing. But I have rarely run into, below the super enterprise, I have rarely run into an e-devel department that I'm like, wow, you got all the money you should have. You got all the people you should have. You're clicking along. Everyone I meet is deficient or stressed or pushed to their boundaries. And so that underinvestment is everywhere.
I would say services mainly, agency services. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Back in the day, ESPs, like I said, that's why I was hired by Digital Impact, had to have agency services or nothing got done.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, the ESPs with agency services became fewer and fewer in number. Some of them shut their doors. Some of them shut down that part of their business. So you fast forward to today, and particularly when you look at the next gen platforms, they, because of the Wall Street model of services will lower your valuation. So keep it all taxed.
There's no profit in services.
Exactly,
right?
but the margins are too low.
Because it's a people-driven thing instead of a technology-driven
Exactly.
thing.
Right.
It's people are not scalable
Right.
Well, and if you
comparatively.
and so they're going to drag down your multiple, so you don't want to have a lot
And that's
of
the key
services.
thing. Even today,
Yeah, right.
ESPs don't want services revenue.
Well, then you now have a hourly model or a time monetization model competing against the SaaS model, and the two are natural enemies, right? I mean, SaaS is literally build something once and sell the shit out of it for the next few years,
Correct.
and there's no way to do that with we're in a service issue or a service agency where time is your currency.
But a brand can't replace that level of expertise
Agreed.
internally. They simply
Correct.
can't, because people cycle through. The people don't stay in those jobs long. It's a stepping stone up where you have the experience, where you have the vision. It's really in, and this, I'm not an email agency, folks, so I can say this, nothing self-serving. That's where the email agencies I believe, are so important, because they bring that creative. The creatives in an email agency want to do email creative. The creative at your regular agency don't want to do email creative, and you're getting the guys just hired out of Parsons School of Design.
It's the true
That
artist
gets
trapped in commercial artist hell.
Yeah, exactly. And so,
Well, it's also the direct mail people or the website designers.
yeah, right.
Slopping it together in a single image with a header and footer and saying, "Look, it's pretty."
Yeah.
You know.
So I think they should, And I even see it when we talk to brands and survey. What are your biggest obstacles to more efficient program, or how do you plan to improve ROI? Real time data is always right there, and the ability to leverage that data. But right behind it is always services. I mean, they know, and it's not the day-to-day people's fault. It's the suits that aren't putting. They need to put more money behind their email program, and not if you're on the right platform, which lots of people are. The only way to really wring more efficiency out of that is to put the brains behind that, and then you go find that. They're not going to build those teams in-house, and you're not going to find it at your vendor any longer. So you got to hire an email agency.
The problem is the perception of value, because email is cheap,
right?
By comparison. Like if you gave in 2 lives ago, McKinsey came into the organization I was working for at the time, and they sat me down, and their question was, if we gave you $5 million, what would you do with it? And I sat there and I went, well, I'd give $4 million of it to the website team to make sure the website was the best it could be. And then I'd still have trouble spending the other $1 million because the program I had at the time wasn't big enough that I was going to get anywhere close to spending $1 million, even with my team being covered under that $1 million.
Right.
If you give $5 million to digital advertising or paid social, they can spend it in a day without blinking an eye.
That's true.
And so there's this perception of value of, because I gave them $1 million and I gave you $50,000, I expect you to get more out of $50,000 than they get out of $1 million.
Right.
And you go, I think this is flipped.
Right.
But okay. Yeah. So there is that. That's the uphill. I mean, I've been on both sides, right? And on the brand side, you constantly fight that battle of, I need to raise my ESP spend by $40,000 next year. And they go, oh my God. And I go, that's a rounding error for the Google team. Why am I getting this shit? Right? And so it's crazy.
I agree with both these points. I agree with Ryan 100%. They underinvest everywhere. Specifically, Chris's point, services, agencies like ours certainly shorten that time to value and get you to that point of success that much faster.
Yep.
I see another area, and that's in the solution itself, right? Specifically in the ESP solution. Not so much in the base license for the base platform. But what we've seen lately, in the last handful of years here, is that, look, the battle between ESPs used to be one of acquisition and retention. And that still exists, but now there's a secondary battle, and that's one of monetization, right? You see a lot of ESPs, they sell the license, and now it's how do we further monetize our existing customer base? Mm-hmm. So they innovate, but they lock those new innovations behind, additional paywalls, additionally paid sort of features and functionality. And to Scott's point, it's, hey, we just spent $500,000 on this solution. We're not spending more for these other little sort of, bits, even if they can advance the business in a meaningful way. Case in point, one of the new wave of ESPs, 4 or 5 years ago, their big pitch was, we give you unlimited data. We'll ingest all of your data, help you find the actionable insights, and that's what's going to make the biggest difference between us and the competitors out there. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to charge you for any of that, right? It's just an all-you-can-eat type of model that's included in the licensing. 2 years later, they did a flip on that. And it's, exactly. We're now going to start charging for data. There's a certain limited amount that comes with your base license. But if you want more, specifically things like additional profile data, event data most specifically, then that's going to cost you.
Right.
That's the result of that. They don't spend on that event data, and it is the event data
that you need.
That really drives the more
that. That piles up very quickly, too.
100%. So now you are just right back to, you may as well have a legacy platform because you're not unlocking a lot of the things that this platform was meant to unlock. Right? So I see folks underinvesting in some of that additional functionality, or specifically the ability to enact a lot of their data on these platforms now that it's being charged.
But that's a problem born out of, and I would agree with you. I think that's one of the problems born out by some of the players in the space that are known for nickel and diming for everything you want, and QBRs turn into 10 minutes of what your business is doing and 40 minutes of what now you need to buy.
Yes.
And so there's almost this PTSD from going from that kind of a vendor to another vendor, and they're just like, oh God, I don't see it all the time. And then somebody comes and says, hey, we got this new thing. And they're like, God bless, leave me alone. And so it's this panic.
What's the worst line I ever heard? Don't worry, it'll be in the next release.
Oh yeah. It's on the roadmap.
Yeah.
It's on the roadmap. It'll be in the next release. There's nothing worse than that.
Mhm.
Because it's never the next release.
Never the next release.
The worst is when they hold their actual annual conference showing all of these things that don't. This will be out later this year. 2 years later, it still hasn't materialized.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, AI is, we got this far without, other than nuking it in the beginning.
Yeah.
How crucial is AI to a tech stack right now? When we talk about underinvestment, is part of the problem that AI is tackling the stuff it shouldn't be, like the soft skills, like writing and design.
Yes.
100%.
Stop there.
And
Mic drop. Yes.
yes, yeah,
That's another area where the vendors got it wrong.
Agreed.
They're pitching the soft skills in their platforms, and brands, and I've seen this happen, and brands are sitting there thinking, no, I want the stuff taken off my plate that I hate to do
Yes.
or that I can't do.
yes.
And so vendors, once again, are disconnected from what they think brands want versus what brands really want.
But that's a maturation of AI, right? Is so it started off with language models, and now that was the infancy of
Yeah,
it.
it was NLP for the longest time.
Yes, and my comments early on was that's great. NLP will be here for 5 seconds. Let me see what the next iteration of that is. And there's some vendors that are very aggressively going against or going for agent development in data manipulation and propensity-driven models, and some of the things that used to take us 6 months to execute with 30 people. To your question, I don't know that I put a lot of value in what it is today, because when we're here next year, it's going to look vastly different.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I would say is, when you're looking at vendors with AI capabilities, look at that AI roadmap in connection with what they've already done. And there should be an equal amount of what they've already done to as what they're going to promise for the next 12, 6, whatever months. But what you want to do is pair yourself with a technology vendor that is aggressive in developing these technologies and this AI, not necessarily what they have today.
Agreed. I don't know if we can mention specifics here, but that quick prezo we saw Kara give, one of our industry colleagues, and I think that was the most practical and meaningful utilization of AI that I've seen thus far. Right before, it's a lot of window dressing, and worse, it's people taking the same shit that's existed for 5 or 10 years and calling it AI.
Correct.
Send time optimization. No,
That's not
right?
AI.
Exactly.
No, that's not AI.
RFM. No, that's not.
Not
Thank you. Right. It's really in the insights, querying the data, understanding where do my opportunity lie, and more importantly, what should I do? How should I execute to actually realize that opportunity?
Yes.
But yeah, the copy, the creative, that's the worst possible place to apply it, because it feels disingenuous. You can immediately sense that complete loss of EQ in those AI generated.
Oh, that's the fun part of the job. The creative stuff is the stuff that's the fun part of the job.
That's why I've stayed in email this entire time. I'm fascinated by what it takes to compel people on a daily basis to put hands on mouse, fingers on keyboard, and follow through on a call to action.
Right.
And I don't want a computer doing that for me.
Right.
It's a human experience. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a reflection of our own human experience, and I don't know if it's something that can be digitally replicated. I'll probably be proven wrong in the next few years, but for right now,
Yeah. No, I don't want to see AI in creative. I don't want to see AI in text, unless you're going to do it at scale and informed by models. But even still, it's
You have to inform the model.
Correct.
Yes.
That's the piece I think people are missing. Oh, I can just throw it into chat
They're
GPT.
following, they're not leading.
It's like,
right.
well, they're just learning from everybody. They're
Right.
not learning you.
Yeah.
They're not learning your brand. They're not learning your voice.
Right.
The promise behind AI is that you teach it and it makes you faster.
Yep.
It doesn't replace you, it makes you faster.
Correct.
And I think the people are, what's happening is, and Chris, you brought it up earlier, with the selling to the practitioners versus selling to C-suite. C-suite goes, oh, I can get rid of people.
Right.
And there's this curse of good enough.
Yeah.
And we didn't.
We've already seen it.
We've done the mic drop of maybe we'll do another podcast on is AI making us dumber?
Right.
Yeah, the short answer is yes, because people are going, it's good enough.
Yeah.
I think one of the problems, going back to your point, Chris, about why people are necessarily using it in creative and in copy, they are hoping that AI removes these repetitive things that tend to take up a lot of their time. And when you work for a brand with a high send frequency, it can be incredibly taxing to come up with, hey, what do I say today versus what I said yesterday? And how is what I'm going to say tomorrow be different to today? So it feels very alluring, I would imagine, for them to be able to, like, hey, let's talk.
Take a mental break. Yeah. But the problem is and when I talk to marketers about AI, and this may be a little harsh, and maybe their particular
There are no
circumstances.
sacred cows in this podcast.
I know, but there's people's hurt feelings. If you need AI to create your copy, your subject line, go back to school
You're in the wrong job.
for being a marketer. That's your job. I've been told that I should never write consumer-facing copy, and it's true. I shouldn't. But I can always start it off, and somebody can look at it and complete it, right? I don't need AI to write it, because every time I see AI written copy, I just throw up.
You can tell.
You can tell.
And I'm sorry, but AI imagery, they haven't figured out eyes and fingers yet.
Fingers.
And
Six
AI
fingers.
video, where the eyes don't really move, but they move all the time.
Every commercial,
Right.
you can see
It's
it right
like,
away.
oh no, it's like
Yeah,
there's. I think I've seen it. I actually haven't watched the show, but the show Scorpion. There's this clip I've seen where like they're in an art museum, and one of the guys just looks at it and then he just slices it, and they all start freaking out. And he's like, "No, it's a fake. The brushstrokes are wrong." And they're like, "How did you know?" And it's because Catherine McPhee, whatever her name was from American Idol. She's on that show.
Oh, okay.
And there's like, she loves this painting, but she was like revolted. Like she could tell something was off about it. And I go back to that and go, that's AI.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if you can sit there and go, it can get you some of the way there, but the important stuff, the nuance, the EQ, you kind of go, this isn't
that's
quite right.
Bit of
Right.
Westworld, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that is a curse of the vendor class that for the last 10 years has fudged the truth on what big data was, machine learning was.
Oh, Lord.
Big data, remember big data?
I remember Big Data.
Machine learning, AI, all this stuff. It's all been pitch after pitch after pitch of we've got the newest buzzword, right?
Du jour, yeah.
Yeah.
But if you ask a marketer today, what's the difference between machine learning, AI, and generative AI? They're going to look at you and go, I don't know.
Isn't
About 3 years between each one. Yeah.
Right. But and that's the problem is that we're informed by a vendor class that is selling stuff and putting lipstick on the pig that is not entirely true. What needs to happen for marketers is really understanding what these terms mean and how the impact is and how that is translated to the platform to which they use it. And what are the limitations to it? There are a lot of limitations to the best AI rollout at a vendor class right now. But the marketer needs to not just suck up the sales speak. They need to actually do the research and reach out to people and say, okay, apply this in a use case. Help me to understand how this interacts with my data. How, to your point earlier, how do I teach it accurately or provide the right information to it for it to be taught?
I mean, to your point, vendors, I think, are pushing something that is, in a large sense, a solution looking for a problem, right? So it's, hey, where can I apply this? Or rather than, what are the friction points in my production process? Where do I lack the resources, the knowledge, or the available time to do these things myself? It's where can I reduce the things that I should be investing less of my time in so I can be working on the more transformative aspects of my marketing strategy?
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
What's
What's 2025 look like? Let's do some predictions here.
I just want to go back to one thing Garrett said.
Okay.
You were talking about, you have to email creative for today and then email creative for tomorrow, email creative. But think about it. 95% of the people you sent that email to today didn't see it.
Agreed.
So
We put a lot more pressure on ourselves
thank
than we need to.
you, exactly.
When I
You
when
can
I
send the
worked
exact
at
same
it
email out the next day, just maybe change the
3
subject line.
lives ago,
With the
we
template
sent
from being
the
sent.
same. We had 4 emails we sent every week.
Yeah,
It was the same damn email every
because
week.
most people don't see
And
it.
to your point, I would send you something about this one thing. You got it 6 months ago. You've been getting the same email for 6 months. You converted on the one I sent you 6 months ago today versus the one I sent you
Right.
today.
Yep.
Right.
That's how crazy humans are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The inbox is becoming the new search engine a lot of times.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Long tail, and we did studies of this back in Sears. We would look at clicks and purchases for an email out 12 months.
Yeah.
And 30% of the revenue from an email came after the first 72 hours.
I believe it. I believe it.
And that's why,
Especially for high consideration purchases, and
Exactly.
everything like that.
But also think about this: when you move ESPs, you cut that off,
Yeah.
Yes.
and
Yeah, that
you have
continuity
to.
is just
You have reset the clock on every email, and
That
so
is a good call out.
one of the things you have to do is go back and look at what your long tail is, and how are you going to replace that revenue, and what campaigns are you going to do to make up that footprint?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point.
yeah, this point of I think people going back and engaging with emails that are months old in their inbox. It kind of goes back to I think it's an article I put out a few weeks ago. It's really trying to sort of reset a lot of marketers' expectation of email. It's not, hey, if I send an email out, everyone on my list is going to convert. Some of them will, but in large part, it's a fleet and being. It's a showing the flag exercise. It's about staying top of mind, top of consideration when folks are ready to convert. They wouldn't think of going anywhere else because you've been continuing occupying that space in their inbox.
Yep.
That is the value. It's not always going to be click send and then I see all of that come back in terms of concrete ROI immediately. It's you're buying yourself market share for future in many cases.
It's awareness. It's an impression. I mean, ad people talk about impressions.
Yeah.
And billboard. What's the difference between a billboard and a subject line? Not much. And
So
we
it's
know
a lot safer too.
Right.
Nothing worse than seeing a QR code on a billboard. But,
Very true.
Oh yeah.
But you
Now that's fun.
as you're deleting an email, you're seeing who it's from. So it's still making an impression from you, even if you don't open it. And I think most of us could come very close to naming every brand. Now we're crazy, but I think most people, when they thought about it, we could name every brand that they're subscribed to. And that's that memory thing that says, oh, I know I get emails from brand X, and I now want to buy something, so I'm going to go back and look at them.
Or how many people
I
will
remember
go
seeing it.
into a
Reinforces
store?
repetition.
Yeah,
How many people go into a store and then go, oh wait, do I have something in my email that's a coupon?
exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
That's a great example of impressions and just being
Mhm.
ready for when they're ready to make that purchase.
Yep.
100%.
All right, guys.
All right,
let's do
Cut back.
2025 predictions.
Okay.
They can be safe. They can be controversial.
Do we get one? I think we should get one.
Everybody gets one.
Year of, I think mobile push is going to see an explosion in 2025. I think it's now natively in most platforms, at least the newer ones, the next gen. And pricing models I've seen them changing. It's incredibly inexpensive to use, and I think brands are going to be embracing because real time data is no good if you can't get it into the customer's hands in real time.
Yeah.
And SMS is too expensive. It's always been too expensive. But mobile push is a way to get an event. We were talking about event data earlier. To react to an event in real time to something that we have with us all the time. So I'm declaring 2025 the year of mobile push.
I'd like to see that broaden out even beyond mobile, right? I mean, web push is something that I think should be a bit more ubiquitous than it is today as well. Mobile push is fantastic. and
I've
it's
never
interesting-
seen web push work, so
Yeah,
I
yeah,
hope
yeah.
you're
Well,
right.
well,
I'm not
we're
a big
talking about
fanboy
the-
of web
yeah,
push.
We're talking about the evolution of the channel, right?
Yeah.
So mobile it's really difficult to beat the engagement and the immediate sort of reactivity to mobile push. The problem is the barrier of entry. One, you have to have an app. Two, your audience has to download the app. Three, they actually have to opt in to receive those push notifications.
But they've opted into your emails. I mean, you make it worth their while.
It's true, right? But that is the barrier of entry. And then a lot of the times when you talk to the brands, it's, well, I already maintain a website, now I have to maintain
This
an app as
segment
well.
of the podcast is not tear down Chris Marriott.
No,
no,
I
it's-
agree
it
with
can
you.
be,
Like I
though.
said, I think it's the most
Can we?
one of the most valuable channels, and certainly has the greatest reactivity, some of the greatest insight, and certainly reflects the highest engaged portion of the audience. Unfortunately, I think it's still just a fraction of their total addressable audience because
Oh, yeah.
of the contingency of the app.
I don't disagree. I mean, email's going to be king for the next 25 years.
Agreed.
But mobile push is 25
Well, I
is
think-
your mobile push.
I think what's important to call out here is, and we've talked about this on some previous episodes as well, is I feel like 5-10 years ago, people just got an app because they thought they needed to have an app. And
Mhm.
we're past that. The maturity of apps has gotten past that. The
Correct.
people who are coming out with apps have a purpose for them.
Right.
Yes.
And so, because there's nothing worse. I mean, the old app days, it's just a storefront.
Literally.
It was
Yeah,
literally
yeah.
just the mobile website. I'm like, well, why am
It's
I
mobile
downloading
catalog.
an app?
Exactly.
It's just that. Whereas if you have an app that enhances loyalty and there's subscription and membership and shipping tracking, I mean, we bash on Amazon a little bit, but they have the best app on the planet, probably, for usability and everything else. It's almost freakishly easy to use in terms of buying and keeping track of everything.
Except I don't think I can buy Kindle books on their app.
No, you have to go through the website.
And that really
That's
hurts
an
me.
Android.
That hurts the hell
That's
out
an
of me.
Android
Right.
thing.
Amazon
but yeah,
knows that.
there you go.
iOS
Yeah.
as well.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Okay. Drives me crazy.
But because of that, if you have an app that increases stickiness, then of course push comes a long way.
Exactly.
And if with these next gen platforms having them, I think MessageGear's bought Swerve last
Swerve,
year.
yeah,
They
Swerve.
announced this time last year.
Yep.
So
Cool platform.
and that I've used that platform on the brand side. It's a great platform. So there's benefits there. And so I can totally get on board with that because thank God we're past the I have an app because I said I had
Right.
to have one.
Right, because everyone else is doing it.
Yeah.
So in a typical year, this industry is split into thirds. Third of the industry is in change, so they're in an RFP. They're wanting to make a change in their stack. A third just moved, and a third is just fine. Starting at the end of Q1 this year, 95% of the market said we're just going to stay put. We're not going to go anywhere. And this is across the board, not only email, SEO, SEM, you name it, everybody kind of froze this year. I think for 25, not a prediction, it's a hope and a dream, is that I believe that 25, we're going to see those thirds shift dramatically. I think there's going to be not a replacement cycle, but an innovation cycle. I think that the pause that a lot of marketers and a lot of companies took this year is going to unstick, and they're going to realize that if they stay dormant too much longer, they're going to be surpassed by the competitive set or the technology set. And third, I think, people just can't, nature abhors a vacuum. And I think this year has been a vacuum for a lot of companies. And so 25 is about those thirds shifting dramatically. So
I like that. I like that too.
For myself, I'd say. Oh, sorry. Did you want to address that?
No, go for it.
you said or web push.
Well, I said as far if we're talking.
Oh,
He was ripping off of my.
I was
Oh,
gonna
okay.
say, hey, let's
Okay.
expand
What is yours?
push.
Yes.
RCS, right?
Mhm.
So I think that really opens up and really increases sort of the viability of mobile as a channel, right? Right now, you kind of see a big divide between brands who just use it as a secondary channel for the same stuff they're sending out via their email, and there are those folks who tend to use it a little bit more thoughtful way. Maybe it's more of the sort of time sensitive, the alerts, the status updates, and things of that nature. I think RCS is going to bring a lot more purpose to SMS, or RCS is going to bring that more of that to mobile messaging. MMS is prohibitively expensive. RCS kind of alleviates that issue, but now we can take more actions directly within the text itself, right? Sort of what the promise of AMP for email
I
was
was going to
supposed to
say,
be.
yeah.
We now are likely going to see more of that being realized in SMS, which certainly opens up the use cases and broadens its usability as a channel.
I will add on RCS will be huge for subscription management
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
and for any sort of order management, things like that. I don't know what it costs. I haven't heard whether it's an SMS equivalent or an MMS equivalent, but
It's
I think
SMS equivalent. It's no addition. It's literally just a new syntax that is available.
oh, that's
on SMS,
fantastic.
so,
Yeah, I mean, I will not be cheeky and say AMP will have its moment because I don't believe it will.
I don't think so either.
I think it's still a far cry away from being. I mean, when you create a third MIME type, you're creating problems. So unless it becomes ingrained in all of the next gen platforms as an option, it's
Correct.
never going to see adoption. 'Cause
Rails
no-
has started talking about it, which so now it was NetCore sort of like the voice crying out in the wilderness.
Netcore
Yeah.
stuff is sweet.
Now Braze is talking about it, and so while I agree with you that I don't think 2025 is the year of AMP, once somebody like Braze starts talking about it, you're going to see, I think, the other guys talk about it a little more. The other next gen platforms talk about it a little more.
They'll have to.
So I don't think it's I don't think it's on life support any longer, and I think it was on life support as recently as 2023.
Yeah. I would just say the interesting thing to watch will be the M&A space.
Oh.
It could be
Nice
the
left
legacy.
turn. Nice left. Yeah.
I'm stealing it from you, Chris, because you were talking about that, but it makes a ton of sense. That some legacy player is going to buy somebody
They're going
next
to have
gen.
to.
They're going to have
Yes.
to.
There's
Or
always
they're
rumors
either
about
going to
two.
have to, or they're going to have to bow out.
Well, Wall Street Journal was talking about Salesforce and Adobe looking at raise.
Yeah.
So it's not even a secret. It's not even a.
Right.
I mean, it's in the Wall Street.
But
Journal.
we're in this period of consolidation.
Yeah.
We're in this period now. We're not in this period. So it'll be interesting to watch. I'm not bullish on Q1 opening the floodgates.
No.
But Q2, based on what happens in Q1 politically, because we had the election this year, which everybody just held on to their wallets basically as a result.
Yeah.
And they're going to watch and see what happens in Q1.
I would push back on that a little bit because budgets are going to be fresh in January.
They might wait on it too. I
It
don't know.
might. My thing is that I'm going to be watching the market, the pipeline from Jan 1 through Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
And in that time, I don't think we see a lot of closed won opportunities, but I think we have a lot of
Increase
conversation.
opportunities.
Yes, increase of opportunities.
Yeah.
Pipeline is a lot more full. There's a lot of realistic timelines put on decision-making processes, and it may push into the end of Q1, but I do believe that first 6-8 week period will be a good indicator of what the rest of the year looks like from an interest in conversation.
Could.
Well, we could go for another hour, but
Cocktail party starts soon.
I was
I know.
about to say.
And I'm parched. I gotta
I
say.
am parched.
All right. Well, all right, guys. Where can people find out more about you and your companies?
You can go to rpeorigin.com. I'm on Twitter at Ryan P. Phelan. LinkedIn, always look me up. And if you want to see my personal side, you can go to Ryan P. Phelan 12 on Instagram to see all my cooking adventures.
And you can find more about me on email -connect. I know but it's email -connect.com. Or you can go to the Global Email Alliance, of which we are all parts of.
We are.
Also find out, or you follow me on Twitter at CS Marriott, or look me up on LinkedIn, or look up Email Connect on LinkedIn.
Well, this has been awesome.
This has been fun.
Yeah.
Next time we need to do it with drinks. I think the conversation.
Next time.
I think it's
Next
stable.
time.
You know what?
I don't think we needed help. Let's put it that way.
I think it would
we
be
didn't
fun.
need help.
It's a little challenge.
Well, hopefully all of you could keep up with all this, and we'll find out very shortly whether the recording actually worked. Thanks to you all who are listening and watching. If you'd like to learn more about Inbox Army, check us out, inboxarmy.com. Till next time, be safe and be well.
Cheers all. Thanks.
Make good choices.